Plane Society. Sometimes there's a lot of penguin usage, right?
They actually know how to do spiritual warfare online. They're good at it. They're trained in it.
IPS is just sharing the truth.
Yeah, it's back to the Infinite Plane Society.
The auto hoaxer revolution.
Auto hoaxer. Auto hoaxer.
The auto hoaxer revolution.
Auto hoaxer.
Okay, we are finally live. I apologize for the delay. It took me almost 30 minutes, but I set up Streamlabs, so you'll notice a much nicer interface. There's quite a lot more going along with this. Streamlabs is a huge improvement. The main thing, though, is we're off the old rickety, broken down, open source OBS broadcasting software, and I think this might do a lot better. And so as we can see, I think right now we are live on a number of platforms. I'm going to get us live on Rofkin as well. So if those of you subscribe to me there, we almost have like 3,000 subscribers there, which is pretty significant as a barometer, considering it's a small platform. And it just shows you how the bigger platforms squeeze out authentic content. And we're now live on the audio feeds as well. Everything's being picked up, and I set it up so that the callers will also be carried. So if you're listening on TuneIn, Paranormal Radio, RadioNet, or Radio King, you will hear both sides of the conversation. Okay, let me go through some comments here. Got a lot of people coming in. Rocco Calzona says, just listening to Faco. Yeah, I'll have to reach out to Faco, JLB, and some other auto hoaxers. I want to get some input on some recent developments. Jamitra 101, P Trippa 103, let's go. 6079 Smith says, it definitely looks like a person standing up wearing a bear suit. Look at the back of their legs. Yes, we'll talk about that. Maddie 33, thank you for joining. Frank Murr, okay, I see a lot of individuals piling in. I sent out text alerts. I know it's going to be a minute. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. There is this story that went viral the other day, and it's because people called the zoo and they said, hey, that looks like a man in a bear suit. And if you look at the back of his legs, yeah, that looks like a human being. It looks like some guy standing in front of you at the convenience store. So what are we looking at here? What is this? Is this a man in a bear suit? And there are many people who believe that gorillas are fake, bears are faked. And this is actually a pretty common conspiracy theory, an area of conjecture. And I would actually put it right up there with the Mandela effect. That's where I would actually rate this particular conspiracy theory. But now, I want to address this. I think this is a very important thing because we can't just flippantly call things fake without knowing why they're fake. And if we're led around by our bias confirmation, by the desire to believe instead of by the facts, then what are we? I talked about this the other day about how we're in a truth desert, and it seems that many truthers just jump for mirage after mirage. Well, here you have what looks to be a man in a bear suit. Again, hard to deny it looks like that. But it's impossible to deny that boats, for example, go over the horizon. To your eyes, they do. So how does someone say that this is just a human in a bear suit? Well, they are going off of this clip, basically. You don't know what came before. You don't know what came after. Can this particular individual in a suit, if that's what it is, can it convincingly do what bears can do? Can it eat like a sun bear? Among other things. So I put together a blog post to deal with this issue because I think it's a big issue. And it has to do with claims of fake and the fact that we are calling things fake from the position of informed media critics. When I say something is fake, it's not because of a feeling or because it might look fake. It's because of the investigation that's gone into it. So we are informed. And what I see here is an attempt to dilute the ability to call fake fake. So Citizen Z says, it looks like a suit, but I couldn't say either way. Well, this is the thing. You don't have enough information to say either way. And that's what you're admitting to. You don't have the info. And this is where I think they get over on a lot of people. I don't have direct experience with it. It's very limited. And the trick, though, the trick is what I want to uncover right here. So about this fake bear phenomenon going around, I think it's a trick that works like this. The person who says bears are fake is setting the stage and the rules. And in this trick, it has been put within the realm of possibility that this or that might be fake. In this case, exotic bears, like the sun bears or the pandas. Now, here's some key points to consider. The person making the proposition is going to show you what they consider to be evidence contradicting what you know. The evidence will consist of video clips where bears do in fact look fake. For example, standing up like humans. These clips will be contrasted with clips of actual bear suits or animatronics to show you that, yeah, these things are fakeable. So they're right in this instance, just to say that bears are fakeable. Jurassic Park, the movie, shows you dinosaurs are fakeable. But just because something's fakeable doesn't mean that it's being faked at scale, even if it's possible. And this is something that runs into the fakeability question. It's about scale. Birds, for example, can be faked with CGI quite readily, but could you replace a bird population with animatronics or drones? Well, obviously not. You couldn't replace the entire population outside, but within a closed movie set, yeah, you could. You can find clips of bears in zoos looking questionable. And you can take those clips, put them together, create a montage, and it's easy to get people based on that limited selection to say something's fishy here. The same goes for gorillas. You can find some clips where gorillas look kind of masky, looks kind of like a costume. And if you create a montage and you show it to someone, just that limited selection, you might get them to agree. And here's how the trick works. It works on the TikTokified minds, best of all. And when I say TikTokified, I mean the modern mind right now, people are so saturated with information and media and narratives and psyops that the facts are disconnected from any cohesive or meaningful whole. Those proposing that pandas are fake present their case in a succinct and brief presentation of facts, and they accompany this by video clips. And what they're giving you is just enough information to think that you can make a decision. So in other words, you're being rushed to judge pre-discovery, even though you don't have anything more than surface details and curated clips. So the way they get you is a selection and a question. They get you to make your decision as to whether it's real or fake. There's not really an opt-out, and there's not really a, I need more info. And most people don't stop to think, I need more info. This is how fake shooting psyops work. For the most part, they get people to agree to something when they're still emotional. So if you're going to say, based on these videos, that bears are fake, then I would say you fell for a trick. You rushed to judgment. Similar to how the Mandela effect works, where they get you to choose based on a false binary. They don't give you a third option because they pre-select. And they pre-select so they can get you to make a yes or no agreement based on their artificially limited selection. The fact of it is, you cannot say bears are fake from just a few clips. If you agree based on that limited information, you made an argument from personal ignorance and incredulity. The suspension of judgment or the withholding of agreement is the only way to see through these things. Because when you really get down to it, the person saying pandas are fake, toucans are fake, koalas are fake, they're bluffing. Because they know that there are videos out there in zoos of bears defecating, eating, and moving in ways that aren't possible to human physiology. You will not find any person in a bear costume doing things that only bears can do. Now, a trained, skeptical mind should see this mechanism clearly because this is how the mass media pulls off hoaxes. If you're not auto-hoaxing, you're not paying attention. And basically, if you're not pausing before agreeing that you were given all the facts or enough facts to conclude something, it's a fascinating trick, and this is what I call sleight of mind. But what is the point? This is the other part of this thing. What is the point to these popular, and when I say popular, this has been covered by even Rolling Stones. Like, this is not a small thing that's gone somewhat viral. But what is the point of it? Are we looking at a harmless bit of conspiratainment, or is there something else going on? And here's what I actually think, because you don't find this being popularized anywhere but among those conspiracy theorists who are already noticing that the news is fake. So if you realize that nukes are fake, school shootings are faked, they throw in something like panda bears are fake, and now you sound crazy. So perhaps this is a psyop intended to dilute the ability to call fake news fake. And this would mix our informed media breakdowns with auto disbelief, which is a form of argumentation from ignorance. The auto hoaxer preemptively will say, this is fake until proven real. Whereas the auto believer, your regular news consumer, will say, it's real until proven fake. Now, the auto disbeliever, just hyper contrarian, borderline nihilist, will say it's automatically fake with no need to qualify it for themselves. You have to qualify your claims. That's my major point here. So this claim that bears are fake or pandas are fake, it's an example of dishonest argumentation. It would be like pointing at mainstream media footage from 9/11 and saying that's evidence. Was it evidence? Well, it was convincing day one, day two, but we didn't have all the facts right away. More footage emerged and called into question the basic story. So the MSM, as you have observed, will rush you to judgment before you can question their sloppy psyops. But the rush to judgment is key here. The coming to a conclusion without getting all the available facts. If you're saying that there are no such things as panda bears based on a few clips that are questionable, then you're stereotyping based on a small selection. You're ruling out or lying by omission, you could say, or misrepresenting by omission by deliberately ignoring. And I'm saying it's a bluff because I don't think there's anyone out there saying pandas are fake that would stand by it with a $10,000 bet. You put money on the line, I don't think that they're going to say that's worth more than the clicks they get from spreading a unfalsifiable conspiracy claim. Now, could these claims, could these logically fallacious, nonsensical claims, could these be purposefully introduced into this targeted demographic, in this case, the media fakery community? Could this be an act of cognitive sabotage? And there are many people claiming it, but here's one of the larger channels, and I'm only bringing this up because this channel also promotes the idea that nukes are fake, which is a valid claim. So what you have here, pandas being fake is one of my theories that sounds the most crazy, even when you first hear it, but when you look into it, there's no chance pandas are actually animals or that pandas existed in nature. So I'm asking, how is this different from birds aren't real, which we know to be a fake conspiracy movement led by Parkland school shooting survivors? Some might say that this is a discrediting move. For example, Trad King GigaChad says, oh boy, these are real animals. Not a good look for a big-time truth teller to get this wrong. Maybe nukes are real after all. Probably being facetious, but it is diluting things. If I started believing in unicorns and Bigfoot, it would call into question my credibility about everything else. Now, one more thing about that particular bear, the sun bear in question that we've been looking at. These things are 28 inches tall. I mean, these things are dog-sized. These are like poodle-sized. These are not big bears. The idea that that's a human is just automatically ruled out. It's not even a possibility. But this has been used by a lot of people who are already on team bears are fake to say, look, I've been saying this for years. A lot of people have been doing it. Booster Bear says it's true, pandas are not real. See, I know you don't believe that. And I know that you wouldn't bet $200. I know you wouldn't put money on it. You wouldn't put your face and your money on the line because you know I could debunk it. Now, Booster says it's a troll, he's joking. Okay, fine. We'll say he's joking. We'll just say that. But there are many other channels that are not, such as Seek the Truth. Humans wearing bear suits been saying this for years. Let me play this clip.
Next this lunchtime, watch closely what you are about to see. A zoo in China has had to deny that one of its bears was actually a human wearing a costume. Pictures and videos circulating on social media showed a sun bear standing on slender hind legs, which users said looked suspiciously like a human in a bear suit. The zoo in eastern China denied the accusations and said the sun bear from Malaysia was smaller and looked different, but it was real.
Okay, it's a small bear. And if you actually look at the way that it moves after that little clip, and this is what I mean, you need more information. So you say, okay, that's definitely a human being. Okay, well, when it sits down, it sits in a posture that would be impossible for a human being, costumed or not. And not to mention it's too small. But you have channels like this who are saying, I've been saying this for years. And you could say it's a joke, but maybe you haven't read the comments. And as you go through the comments, you'll find that a lot of people are thinking that this stuff is fake. Lots of them. Now, what does this mean? Some gorillas look fake too, someone remarks. Again, people don't believe in toucans. Now, it's okay to not believe in toucans. It's okay to not believe in panda bears. I'm not really saying that's a huge problem for me necessarily. I'm just saying that it calls into question your credibility if you make claims that you cannot substantiate, back up, qualify, defend, or claims that are simply unfalsifiable, and it puts you in the same camp as the mainstream media when you're using their tricks to get people to accept a faulty premise. Rocco Calzone says zero discernment. Well, this is what I'm pointing out. The concept of media deconstruction requires that we are more educated than the average viewer. And if you can fall for a simple loaded question, if you can fall for it's on the screen, therefore it's real, then you're really just as lost as anybody else who says, I believe Apollo 11 because I saw it on the screen. Copaesthetic says the man in the dog costume was purely coincidental, I'm sure. Right, there was a guy in a collie costume, a lassie costume, who is identifying as such, and his kids will probably be born furries. Ears Up says, I saw the pandas in San Diego, real bears, and could use a bath. Well, my main question is this, though, because maybe people are just, quote, joking. Okay, you're joking. So I get it. If you're a comedian, you're joking. It doesn't matter. Your claims about nukes being fake, no need to pay attention to that. Your claims about NASA being fake, you're probably joking there too. Bears are fake. It's all a joke. I'm saying that these are not equal claims, and we have to separate bad claims from claims that can be substantiated. And if you can make a snap judgment based on a clip, as many people do, then you don't have the mental immune system that I think is required to survive in today's mass media environment. The thing is a joke, fine, but do the jokesters understand? This is another question. Do the jokesters understand the flaws in their own assertions? Perhaps maybe they could point out a conspicuous lack of evidence, like there's no evidence for sun bears outside of these little public displays. Like show us that there's no evidence of them as babies giving birth. But again, they're 28 inches tall, 30 inches tall. They're not that big. And this is dismissive of decades of research by biologists who have studied these animals. And so we're talking about fakeability. So yes, you have a point. They're fakeable. But are they fakeable at scale? The answer is obviously no. And so the jokesters may not understand this, but I'm saying the point of it is this. Mass mind control works by exploiting the public's lack of awareness of how it works. as is the case with mass marketing. People don't know how certain techniques work. Like, for example, the people who are buying into that Sound of Freedom movie, yeah, they were being hit with bandwagoneering, peer pressure, guilt trips. There's all kinds of techniques that were being used to manipulate them. A lot of them were also manipulated into thinking that there are children in underground tunnels that are being rescued every day. Now, where are they getting this information? Well, they're getting it from people on the internet who are telling them these things, but are presenting it in such a way that is compelling to people who don't see how they're being set up or manipulated emotionally. The term mind aids was coined to describe minds that are open to believing absurdities because of a lack of a proper immune system. If your mind doesn't have an immune system and you'll believe anything, you've got mind aids. And thankfully, Infinite Plane Radio is mind war inoculation. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're reverse engineering the psychological warfare, all of its tricks, and inoculating ourselves against it. So just to recap here, the error with the bears are fake or any animals are fake is in stereotyping from a small selection of clips. Stereotyping from an example, and then making the leap that because it's fakeable on a small scale, it is fake on a big scale. Bobby Johnson says, no comment on real fake, 50-50 waste time and misdirect. Well, it's not a waste of time if you can categorically debunk this kind of claim. Because, like, for example, the Mandela effect will say, okay, fine, you don't believe Ed McMahon passed out money. What about Timmy in the well? What about Lassie? You know, where Lassie's telling the parents to get Timmy. That never happened. And they'll go through a list. What about your underwear? Isn't there a cornucopia in it? Jif or Jiffy? And my point is, once you've debunked it categorically, you don't have to deal with every BS claim. You just have to reverse engineer how their argument is structured to get people to accept the faulty premise. And in this case, now that we know that the proposition is a combination of bluffing, it's a combination of, I'm not going to say lying, but I'm going to say it's definitely a bluff, but it's in drawing a generalization from an example. And one more thing, rushing to judgment based on limited information. So this fake bear psyop is something that I think it's worth looking at, because once you can debunk this, you can look at similar psychological operations. And this applies to the mainstream media. As I was saying, every fake school shooting they show you fits this pattern. Look at this clip of kids running. Look at this clip of a mean guy with a gun. Look at this clip of parents hugging their children. The only thing that we can conclude here is there was a mass shooting. And I'm saying, well, no, that's actually not a valid claim. We need more information before we can rush to that judgment. PE says, can we move on from fake bears? Absolutely. We can move on from fake bears, but it has to be addressed because it's not done yet. And the fact that it hasn't been debunked is, I think, kind of noteworthy. This has been going around for some time. And, you know, there are a number of other areas and conspiracy theories that I think are put there for the purpose of sabotaging any attempt to legitimately call things fake. Bobby Johnson says, really silly misdirection, more exciting than Hunter Biden. Or aliens, for that matter. And the alien thing is a distraction from Hunter Biden, so from what I heard. But, you know, people often say you're being distracted or this is a distraction. I'm like, well, a distraction from what? The Psywar is built on distraction. I'm learning how to undistractify the people listening and those who are falling for these tricks. And so if you are saying, yeah, that's obviously BS, and you just automatically disregard it, I understand that. Hitchens' razor. That which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. You're not obligated to give it 1 second of your valuable time. And I generally don't. But this time I thought, you know what? This latest instance of these people confidently jumping up and saying bears are fake, I'm going to do something. I'm going to comment on it. And the best I can guess is that this is a psyop targeting truthers. Here's a short clip. January 6th man standing next to Ashley Babbitt is on Woo's News. We're going to the next topic. We're going into the January 6th event because if you watched January 6th and you only watched from one source, let's say CNN, you would assume it was an insurrection. If you watched Fox, you would assume it was a peaceful protest and Ray Epps convinced everybody to run inside. But if you stood back and you suspended judgment and you waited for more information, you waited for Woo's News, you would have found out that January 6th was entirely a staged riot. Start to finish, 100% fake. And in his video, 21 minutes or less, Everything Wrong with the Capitol Riots, he shows how Ashley Babbitt could not have died. In fact, there was a jump cut. It was in all likelihood filmed in advance. That's very possible, or filmed somewhere separate from where everyone was actually going. But whatever the case, it's been debunked. And Woo's News is the one who has debunked it. Well, he has continued to put out more content. And here's a video where he actually is talking to someone from January 6th who claims that Ashley Babbitt was not shot. Again, let me just play this clip from Woo's News.
I make my way into where Ashley Babbitt is supposedly shot. So Jaden X and his cohort that invited me in that room were very much actors. The police officers, they didn't stop anyone. They didn't tell anyone. And if they did, it didn't seem realistic enough for anyone to even, because they don't do it right. They're going to specific people and they're acting out little scenarios that don't make any sense.
Did you see any blood? What's your thoughts on this whole blood question?
I don't think it was real blood.
Do you think she's a crisis actor? Do you think she's acting?
Yes.
Do you think?
Yeah, it's pretty bad acting. Yeah.
You think it's acting? None of these.
Pretty bad acting. This is where you have to recognize the implementation of guardrails and how the alternative media is there to contain you. You have someone like Tucker Carlson who's going to leave the elite media. Now he's one of the people. He's going to tell the truth they didn't want you to hear about. And what is he saying? Ray Epps did it. Ray Epps is a Fed. Ray Epps tricked everyone into doing it. So they will give you an alternative version, but nowhere do they say it was fake. Art Bell says, New York Post says the bears are smaller ones from Malaysia. When they stand, it looks different from tall, fat bears. But the video of the waving bear is IPR fakeologist food. Yeah, the one waving around with its wrinkled back, it looks like a person. It really does. And I have to agree with people. Like, I'm not saying that your senses are lying to you. A lot of chemtrail believers get mad and they say, are you telling me my eyes are lying? No. I'm telling you that your eyes are accurately reporting back that you're seeing lines in the sky. But your mind is lying to you. Your interpretation is off, and it's off because you accepted a loaded question. Same thing with the boats. Your eyes will lie and tell you that boats go over the hump and that you're on a ball. Your eyes are perverts. Your eyes will lie and tell you that you're a ball earther. But the fact of it is, angular resolution explains that error in perception, which can be corrected with telescopic lenses, P900s. Going through your comments, Javo82 says, Rafa from Woo's News just came out with a good perspective on 1/6. What you saw on 1/6 was a lot of LARPers, a lot of actors, all theater set up in advance. I don't think any of it's organic. It wasn't intended to succeed. And as of right now, Donald Trump was just indicted by a federal grand jury who are investigating these efforts to overturn the election. Now, Trump is going to be, well, we'll see. He's prophesied, if you consider predictive programming to be a prophecy, to be the recipient of some kind of Psyop. We'll just leave it at that. I don't want the Secret Service visiting me, but there's a lot of people talking about it. 8/4. 8/4 is the day to look out for. Now, I've said this before. Life imitates psyops. I began saying this after the train derailment following the white noise. I said, does life imitate psyops or do psyops imitate life? So here's a story that's trending right now, and it's another example of conspiracy theorists just noticing coincidences. But there was a death of a celebrity named Angus Cloud. Now, if you don't know who Angus Cloud is, he's an actor from this show called Euphoria, and he just died at 25. Now, the Drudge Report says life imitating art, and the reason why is that he looks like Mac Miller. Angus Cloud dies at 25, looks like Mac Miller. Like the resemblance is striking. And they die a year apart, or a year apart in age. Now, the reason why this is significant is that people had asked him if he would play Mac Miller in a biopic. And he said, quote, "I don't think I would be prepared to take on someone's life and legacy and try to replay it. You know, the man is a legend and he's going to remain one. May he rest in peace." So here you have Angus Cloud saying he would not do this biopic. Then he dies in a similar way that Mac Miller dies. And it says here, following the news of the actor's death, fans took to Twitter to compare the two side by side, discussing their resemblance. One wrote, "I always thought how Angus Cloud should play Mac Miller in a biopic. I badly wanted to see Angus Cloud play Mac Miller. Damn, rip, both died too young. They look exactly the same. What could this mean?" A fan pondered. Now, when you get into Mac Miller's death, there are some interesting facets to this. If, for example, the last picture ever taken of Mac Miller, and this is actually the subject of a documentary, the last photo taken of Mac Miller, he has this eye in the triangle thing going on. The story of Mac Miller's final photo, it's an entire article, but this photo is his parting shot. So he was already rumored to be some kind of a death faker. So now you have a death faker whose death is weirdly mirrored by somebody who looks like him and dies in the same way. Javo82 says Babbitt is still alive. Oh yeah, no doubt. Ashley Babbitt's not dead. Nor is Officer Sicknick or Rosen Boylan or any of these other actors and actresses. QAnon Shaman's pretty active right now on Twitter. He's basically became a right-wing fixture. QAnon Shaman is, in fact, kind of a media star now. It's strange to me. The whole thing is just so bizarre and strange. He's obviously a Fed. There weren't any random people who were just walking around the Capitol that day. The level of scripting, the level of reality fakeability is really so far beyond what the general public is prepared to accept. Now, Trump entered this rally with the song playing, and the song, some country song, I'll have a clip of it here, but what's notable is when he gets on the stage, the lyrics say something about going to prison, and then as he faces the audience, the lyrics say something about becoming president. I think it's called Only in America. Again, this is Donald Trump getting onto the stage. The song is Only in America, something along those lines. And it's perfectly timed lyric-wise, referencing that he may be going to prison or he may become president. Coincidence? I don't know. But if it's not a coincidence, it shows you that they are indeed capable of very well-timed maybe it's a joke, but regardless, Donald Trump indicted by a grand jury for this attempt to overturn the election. We'll see what happens. It's still building up. If you just got here, we've been talking about mostly the fake bears and the basis for that claim and why it's invalid. Last night we talked about the weird connections between Barbie and Oppenheimer. Connections which may go deeper than just the timing of their mutual releases. A number of people had remarked on the dollhouses that they blew up pretending that nukes were real. Might be a connection. Then you had the Bikini Island connection where the phrase bombshell comes from, and bikinis which tie into Barbie, and it was something that came in with the very first nuke tests. So there is this kind of correlation that has been kind of obvious, but then there's a deeper layer to it. I think I need to go watch the movie Oppenheimer to really make sure I haven't missed anything about this. But no coincidences on the world stage, and oftentimes the timing of movie releases tell some similar story or reinforce. We also talked about MAGA Ben, and this was Ben Shapiro burning a Barbie doll because she dissed the patriarchy and her uncovered hair. Again, very strange phenomenon. These right-wingers were 1 minute trying to save the children, and now they're mad at Barbie. We've been talking about the incel jihad, which is getting more intense as the Nick Fuentes ramps up his rhetoric, basically making the case for a new holy warrior to resist the westernized women and the deep state, which is basically the great Satan. They took down the X at Twitter. I had posted an article about that, just the timing of it. And I think there might be something worth looking into regarding the cross and the dove, and how the Twitter bird became an X. And how if you look at the symbolism around Christianity, you can't really separate the dove and the cross. These are some of their oldest symbols. And I think that the blue bird going to the X may mean something. Moreover, the X was glowing for a night before they took it down. They wouldn't let him keep it up. But he has this big, giant, blazing X on the Twitter headquarters. And I think this is a reference to the dog days of summer, which we're in. Sirius, from the Greek word meaning lit or glowing, is behind the sun. And this seems like some kind of a serious ritual, this big glowing X. And what's more, the Freemasons worship the dog star, and they call it the blazing star. At the same time that you have the blazing X on top of the building, Musk updated Twitter's slogan to Blaze Your Glory. So blaze your glory, blazing star, glowing X thing during the dog days of summer. Probably not a coincidence. Nor is the bird and cross, because I think ultimately this ties into the new replacement religion, the new universal faith, which has all the trappings of Christianity but updated. We often talk about how the dove is linked with Noah and the ark and the flood myth, and how the global warming is a reintroduced flood myth, and how Noah, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, is consistently telling us that there's going to be a flood, and their logo is a dove. So these are just reboots. So the fact that you have this dove cross thing is probably correlated with the role of X in the consolidation of the new Bible, the new living Bible, the thing that keeps us all on the same screen. It's a closed system, just like any holy book. And that's what they're in the process of doing. They're in the process of purifying the doctrines. That's what the censorship's about. The censorship is about reality control. It's not about protecting people's feelings. It's about maintaining a monopoly. And they certainly have it. And now, as you can see with Twitter, they're already in the process of not only unifying everything under the sign of the cross or the X, which I think is Musk's historic role as this new Constantine figure. There's that aspect of it, the consolidation of everything. But then there's also the rate limiting and the closed system where now on Twitter you can't look at tweets unless you're logged in. It's all a build-up. And of course, the rate limiting is preparing us for probably when they eventually convince us that you can't leave your house because of the environment, but you get a certain allotted number of steps, so like a rate limit. I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to limit the air, like how much air you can breathe, but that does seem to be one of the themes. There's a show on Netflix called Black Knight, which has this exact theme, just like Mad Max, but they're basically running out of air, which is another theme in every single show that you see on Netflix. Everybody's wearing masks, and everything has something to do about air quality. Black Knight is another one of these dystopian films. It says, this is from Netflix, in a dystopian future devastated by air pollution, the survival of humanity depends on the Black Knights, far from your average deliveryman. Basically, Uber Air, or Mad Max with air. By the way, phones are open. If you want to call in, it is 505 349 0420. And you're also able to Skype in if you like. Again, we talked about this crazy looking sun bear, and I admit that these things are exotic and that they look sort of human. And this is something else I want to bring up. Bigfoot. I think that I've solved Bigfoot. Bigfoot, in all likelihood, is nothing more than bears walking upright, which they're apt to do. And a bear looking upright will look the same as a Bigfoot from a distance. I think that would explain it. I think that's pretty much the only reasonable assertion. One of the tricks that they play whenever they frame a question meant to get you to accept a faulty premise is they put things into the realm of possibility that shouldn't be there. Realms of possibility. For example, you're camping in the woods and you hear a noise. Is it Bigfoot or a deer or a raccoon? Multiple choice. Well, there's no reason you would ever choose Bigfoot because it hasn't been established to exist. And yet, if people go on a camping trip in an area where there are rumors of Bigfoot, they will include Bigfoot on the list. And if they're emotionally attached to the idea, they will report that it was Bigfoot or it might have been. So that might have been is a gray area where now they're allowed to insert something into reality that wasn't there by saying it might have been, maybe not. Well, might have been is not even a possibility. Same goes for the ISS. People will say, I saw lights out there. Could have been a satellite. Well, no, technically those haven't been proven to exist. Orbiting satellites are still a hoax, unless you have some evidence that you can show us. An orbiting space station is a hoax and a movie, unless you have some kind of evidence to contradict this. It's not even in the realm of possibility. So when someone says, I looked towards the horizon and I saw a light, it might have been the space station. Not a valid claim. Not a valid claim, unless it's attended by more than just a light. It would need to be some kind of specific thing timing it with your app. And people talk about these tracking apps as though they go outside, hold the app up, and they see it. You've never seen that in a video. Every video of an ISS transit you've ever seen has been a close-up of it passing the sun or passing the moon. And that's a trick. That's another sleight of mind. It's like a magic show here. What I mean is, you don't see the object in the sky with your eyes, or the cameraman's not seeing an object passing in front of the moon. You can't even see it until it's in front of the moon, because at night it's invisible. You would only see its silhouette. During the day, if it's passing the sun, you won't see it. It's too bright, unless you see its silhouette. In both these instances, you don't see it. There are no witnesses. The only witness is the camera with a filter on it. And the problem with that is there's a separation between the pure observation and then the camera itself and the presentation. There's room for it to be fudged. Alan Smith says, hello, Tim. I'm finally catching you live. Awesome. Feel free to call in if you like. Numbers on the screen. We're talking about arguments, bad arguments, bad faith argumentation, and whether or not some claims need to be debunked. In the case of the fake bears, if somebody says koala bears are fake, again, you don't have to debunk it. But at this point, because we know how the argument works, how this trick works, how this sleight of mind works, I think it's appropriate to go past merely ignoring a silly claim, but asking the person, what is the basis? What is your basis of evidence? And are you willing to debate it? Is it falsifiable? These are the questions we ask of the mainstream news media. And these are the questions we ask of any Psyop. why should we turn our critical thinking off whenever it's some kind of claim of fakery just because we know the media itself is largely engaged in fakery? Again, it's an attempt to dilute the perspectives of those who can actually determine what's going on, who can actually discern it. Auto disbelief is something that I actually talk about in the auto hoaxology textbook because it's very important to rule out those observations. Because what we're doing here is we are clarifying. We are, in fact, I would say in many ways, the most informed people about what media is. And we don't want the ability to call things fake to be diluted by bad actors. Bad actors or just people seeking cheap clicks. But I find it really strange when people put clicks ahead of truth. I'm often pointing out how the QAnon cult is nonstop manufacturing fan fiction in order to keep their cult going. And at this point, it is just it's a travesty. They've gone into full delusion. And it's not just delusion. Some of it's quite disturbing, the way that they actually make stuff up about the Bidens beyond what's already there in order to get people to accept their claims. And lying to get people to believe something. You can say, well, maybe it's better. Like, no one's paying attention to Hunter Biden's laptop, so you throw in some spice, some people look. Okay, well, isn't that what Sandy Hook was all about? Isn't that what every perception management stunt is about? We want people to pay attention to the weather, so we're going to create this hype. We want people to pay attention to the gun control issue, so we're going to hype this. Like, I don't think it's ever okay to use lies and trickery and bad argumentation to score points. I think that's exactly what we're opposed to and have been. If you're looking on the screen, here again is the bear video that was talked about. And again, people are saying that this is as fake as panda bears, but the reason why people are even comfortable making the claim it's fake is they're making a judgment based on that short clip and stereotyping. That's the logical flaw. You can't make a judgment off a short clip if you're omitting something that might contradict it. Okay, phones are open. I apologize for that. I had the ringer off. The ringer's back on. You won't hear it though, but if you call in, it is now active. Someone in the comments here says, show the whole video. It reveals a real bear. Exactly. Show more footage. And they won't. If they're pulling off a magic trick, like the ISS, you only get one camera angle. Do you know what would happen if you had more camera angles? You would see harnesses. You would see green screens. You would see a number of indications that this thing is a hoax. You would see the camera crew, the fourth wall. You know, the whole fourth wall concept is the idea of the audience is actually looking into the staged area and the fourth wall doesn't exist. And when the actors address the audience directly, they're looking through that fourth wall. But it is only a convincing illusion if you stay in your seats. And when I say that the person asking the question is conducting a trick, well, it's like a magic trick. And it only works if you sit and you look at it from the perspective they give to you. Bobby Johnson says it's fake in part of the video, real in the other. No, I think the whole thing is real. Sun bears are real. And the question is, are they fakeable? Actually, no, they're too small. And those very long tongues, no way. Listen to this. Watch Maga says, I and a few colleagues came to the same conclusion regarding panda bears years ago. We didn't suspect, though, that pandas, being a recently bred species, we suggested that they are feral domesticated animals released into the wild. Perhaps we're wrong. Interesting. Ollie Goering says, sun bears are so cute. Well, yeah, sun bears are real. That's the thing. So you could possibly squeeze somebody into a Sun Bear suit, but um, again, it's a silly argument. It's a bad faith argument, and they wouldn't put money on it. Like I'll put it out there. If you believe that panda bears are fake or koalas are fake, put $500 on the line, and that bet, I think, will reveal if someone is actually serious about the claim. And then, of course, the burden of proof is not mine, but I would take that extra step and I would go ahead and prove my case. If you're looking at the screen, that's the man who identifies as a collie. Fascinating. Again, it's a great point. Fakeability, yes. Fakeable at scale, no. And that's the main power of the elite through their media, is the ability to fake reality. And most people don't know the scale of it. Bobby says they have our dumb asses talking about it, though. But we're not just talking about it. We're actually inoculating ourselves and anybody who listens to this against accepting such a silly claim. That this is not a valid claim, and now we know why. And any person espousing it to be real is admitting to abysmal ignorance and perhaps some kind of malevolent intention. Or they're just joking. But whatever the point, I haven't seen anyone joke about it that can actually explain the flaw in their argument. And the flaw comes from, again, rushing to judgment based on cherry-picked data. Okay, phones are open. If you want to try calling again, there you go. And if you want to know how to solve the Skype ringer, I figured it out. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Tim, how you doing? Rocco Calzone.
Hey, what's up, Rocco?
Just want to touch on the fake bears, fake birds topic.
Yeah, what's your take on it? Have you heard about this before?
Sure. Yeah, mostly from you, but listen, these people have not consumed enough material. Like, they haven't watched enough Planet Earth or gone to enough zoos or watched enough nature documentaries. You know, they're lacking in their exposure to animals.
Yeah, that's a worrying sign, isn't it? And I thought about this with a lot of the TikTokers who are saying gorillas were fake. I'm like, you know what? They just haven't been out in the world, so they're living through the screen so much that they don't have a basis for comparison. So in a way, it's almost tragic.
Yeah, it's disconcerting in a way.
I call it a philosophical crisis. I call it mind AIDS because it's a problem. And I do think we can fix it. I think this is a deliberately engineered philosophical crisis to make people susceptible to mind control. What else could it be?
It's funny how dependent they are on the synthetic space, like the phony space data and pictures, but then like real animals and real images are like, it's weird how it's a divide like that. It's like a dichotomy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just a symptom of the times. And I think that when someone can look at a 2-minute video and make a conclusion based on that, they've been conditioned by the mass media that you can be served a story in one bite and then you know the whole thing. I don't think that they teach people to be patient and to actually process information.
Yep. Soundbite. TikTokification of a nation. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a symptom of it. And, nothing against TikTok. However, it's microblogging. It's short form. And it's like with a court case. You have to have a discovery process. You can't just go off the surface details. And the idea that you could make a conclusion based on one video is entirely new. That's just pure TikTokification. And it's an unrealistic expectation.
Right, and then to think you're right. That's another thing. Like yeah, the infallibility of it. You have to be right. It's like a right supremacist. I like that. I heard that phrase one time. You're a right supremacist. You just have to be right. It doesn't matter if it's true or right. You just have to be right.
Yes, and I challenge this stuff. Like, for example, there are some people who promote the idea that you can get rid of condensation or chemtrails by boiling vinegar. Now, I make fun of the notion, but I want the people who claim it to back off their claim now that we've fixed it for them. They should say, okay, you know what? That's faulty causality. I tricked myself. But I don't see any of them backing off that claim. Instead, they block me. And I have to wonder, is it that hard to be honest? Is it that hard to admit that you've been tricked? And for some people, it is.
Yeah, so $200 bet with Owen Benjamin about pandas being real.
You know what? I would like to, but since he's a comedian, he gets plausible deniability. He can say he was just joking. But I would happily put a $200 bet down for anybody against any of these supposed fake animals, because I know I could get to the truth of it very quickly. We have reporters everywhere. It wouldn't be hard. So if someone's making a serious claim, yeah, $200, easy.
Yeah, easy as $200.
Fascinating. Well, look, this is what we have to do. Appreciate the call. Have a great night.
Thank you.
It's about accountability. And accountability is huge when it comes to this concept of media deconstruction, because we're saying that we want them to be accountable for the lies, for the false worldview, for any kind of logically fallacious argument. We want accountability. That's why I don't trust anonymous sources like Q, because no one's accountable. You can't talk to Q and Q will say, yeah, this is my source. And when I make a claim, I have something to back it. When someone makes a claim and they don't, then it's a fair question to ask them, why are you making this claim? Is it for clicks, or are you actually reality impaired and you find it believable? And if someone won't step back and correct a bad faith argument or bad argumentation, then they are standing by what is tantamount to a lie. So just to hold him to it, until Crow 777 admits that boiling vinegar has no effect on the clouds, but that he mistook the cause and the effect because, X happens before Y, therefore X caused Y. Until he can see the flaw in that, I think that he owes us an explanation. Like, either he doubles down on the vinegar thing, demonstrates it live, and changes the world, or he admits that he got it wrong. But instead, I get blocked. And I wonder, why do people block me when all we're trying to do is get some clarity? Bobby Johnson says there are fake birds, but they are rare. Well, the fake bird thing, I think, mostly consists of the claim that toucans are parrots with plastic beaks glued on them. Not Shock says they're trying to dilute the word fake. Bottom line, that's absolutely it. The bottom line, they're trying to dilute fake. They've done it before, and they're doing it again. And they're trying to dilute the pool of thinkers. So now they're clear thinking, rational media deconstructionists 80% of the time, but then they fall for this, and this. And I don't think that we need to be duped. I think that these various fake conspiracies that get popular are also great opportunities for teaching, because if you're able to successfully deconstruct and break down the premise that props up the idea that gorillas are fake, well, all those people who doubted gorillas might actually listen to your argumentation. And that argumentation can be applied to any facet of the Psyop entertainment complex. Javo82 says Hitchcock's Birds. Yeah, that movie, many movies show you just how fakeable things are. Like, I saw this ridiculous attempt at debunking claims that the moon landings are fake. And his claim rested on this notion that there is no way they could have faked it in the 60s. That it would be easier to go to the moon for real than fake it. That was his argument. Well, anything you can fake in the movies, you can fake in real life. And what you saw at Apollo 11 was actually worse than Kubrick, was worse than a lot of the B science fiction of the time. And that's an important point to keep in mind now that Oppenheimer is out. Anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake in real life. And when they drop the nuke, detonate the nuke, high altitude, EMP blast, take out Seattle, whatever it is, when you see that mushroom cloud, salute Christopher Nolan, because he will have been the one to have provided those visual effects. Christopher Nolan. R. Cook says, have to lose all trust in media. Yes. Yes, exactly. Trust your own perceptions. Because, ultimately, your perceptions are a kind of something that you sync together after. Like you perceive all these things and then you create a cohesive picture in yourself, but there's already a filter, just built in to your consciousness. Your physical senses are a filter. So you have this reality perceived through these senses. The screen is just another filter. And what I'm suggesting here is that the screen should not be in front of your senses. It's not another sensory apparatus. It's meant to augment or inform. But what it's done for many people, it has actually been turned in their minds into a window to the world, a direct pipeline to get more information without having to critically think about it. Psyop, says Lean Dion. Yeah, the Oppenheimer movie is about a very important thing, which is the birth of the nuclear age. The date 7/16 is a very interesting and notable date in the context of Stanley Kubrick and that whole department that fakes space and assassinations, among other things. Now, I didn't get this question answered. If you want to call in and answer this, do any of you think that the fake bear thing is a random meme, or do you think it's a deliberate attempt by the men in black to sabotage and, to cognitively sabotage the intelligentsia of the conspiracy crowd? Do you think it's some kind of a psyop? Because I think it is. I think it's sabotage. I think it's a susceptibility test. Let's see if they'll fall for this. Here's how you frame it. I think that there are people, and I got this idea from that movie Utopia, where if you haven't seen Utopia, the American version, it's about this guy who makes synthetic meat. He fakes a virus to sell a vaccine to sterilize the youth. If you haven't seen it, it's a great movie all around. It has elements of predictive programming, for example. We're talking about Utopia. But there's this one scene where they have to make somebody up real time. And they have this newsroom where they make up an actor, they have someone pretend to be the person. So you see them making up crisis actors behind the scenes. But they're behind the scenes in a room talking about how they're going to fabricate reality, like newsbenders, like the newsbenders department. But I can imagine a mind map on the wall where they're like, have your operatives ask this question of this group. And this is a flow chart. If they answer yes, send them here. And I think they flow chart out a lot of these conversations to get people to filter themselves into a category. It's all marketing. It really is. It's a target marketed conspiracy theory meant to sabotage media critics. Tomonoid 2 says it may have started organically for views and trolls, but when they all started talking about it 5 years later, right. Yeah, I agree that it could have been that. Although it started with Hans Wormhat, very questionable figure. And I like tracing the source of these things. This is how limited hangout operations work, where if they know something's going to leak or they want to control people who might be looking at something suspiciously, you leak a little bit of information to draw them all in, and then you control them and whatever information is subsequently leaked. Okay, going through some comments here. Lean Dion says Cam B level misinfo. Right. we started talking about masks extensively, about deep fakery, not the digital kind, but the synthetic masks. We were popularizing the work of Jonah Mendez, who had retired from being the chief of disguise for the CIA for 27 years. So we were talking about this for some time. And then we started to get this caller in who would just bring up these outlandish claims. And he would say, Barack Obama is Epstein in a mask. And so I would, at the time, we would entertain these. We would look at pictures. And it was kind of funny because you could find a lot of people that look alike. But what I realized was that he was saying, don't take my word for it, look into it for yourself. Well, that's the shifting of the burden of proof. Like if you're going to make an extraordinary claim and you're not going to do your own homework, you have no business making that claim. It should just be rejected. But I humored it for a little while until I realized that this was another form of, I think, time wasting. But I learned a few things about it. One, never accept somebody else's burden of proof. I called it an argument from laziness. You can't say, I can't prove it, but you can prove it for yourself. Like that doesn't work. And second, it taught me something about how perception works and how you can someone can suggest something to you and kind of make it more believable. So for example, if you put two faces of two different actors close together and they look sort of similar, we'll say 80%. If you look at them for a minute and you've already been under the impression or someone suggested to you it's the same person, then it is not hard for the human imagination to bridge the gap. This is the basis of animation. When you look at animations, it's a bunch of cartoons on separate sheets of paper, but when they are put into a reel and they overlap, it looks like one character moving. So you're perceiving Bugs Bunny as a walking bunny on the screen, but in reality, it's a bunch of disparate images that aren't actually connected. Your imagination fills in the blank. And I think the same goes when you put two faces side by side. It's like this process with animation where your mind can say, okay, this logically follows that. It's an easy way, I think, to sort of trick yourself because it's fakeable. When you include in the fact that it is fakeable, that person A could be person B with this amount of prosthetics. So then again, we get into this question of, is it fakeable? And it's an interesting area of discourse to go into this stuff. But ultimately, just because something looks like something doesn't mean it is, especially when it comes to the mass media, because that's ultimately what they do. Hey, look, these guys are floating in space. Space is real. It's like, no, I don't think they look like they're floating. I need more information because there's some other clips where it kind of contradicts that. But as long as they don't have people having access to all these other clips, as long as they can selectively curate your reality, they can get you to almost believe anything. Suggestibility is a huge part of this entire war. We talk about predictive programming all the time. What do you think it's doing? The purpose of predictive programming is to train you along those neural pathways for what's to come. And that process of training you to accept it is suggestibility. It's suggesting that it's even a possibility. The idea that it's in the realm of possibility is surreptitiously inserted there, where it shouldn't be. And this auto-hoaxology thing is about taking what I call the MSM minus perspective. What's on the screen? MSM, mainstream mediated minds believe it. Conspiracy theorists, they're MSM plus. They add on to it because they know it's not the whole picture. So they have to come up with other stuff to explain it. But I take the MSM minus. I prefer to strip away what can't be verified. And this stripping away process, this requiring proof for things, it strips away a lot of these possibilities. It takes things out of the realm of possibility that shouldn't even be there. So in my worldview, it's not even in the realm of possibility that there might be a comet or meteors that might come down and hit us, space junk, climate change, geoengineering. None of these things are even in my frame of reference. Or space wars. The idea that there's going to be some kind of war in space, that there's going to be contention over that turf. If there is, those of you here are informed enough to know what it would actually be. Basically, simulation and a bunch of crisis acting. But the frame of reference is very important here because the mainstream mediated worldview has a frame of reference that is this entirely curated world stage, is what I call it, closed system of ideas that excludes and omits things that contradict it. And of course, the view I take on this whole thing is that when you step away from it and you recognize the stage as such, you realize that you can't trust anything you're shown because you're not shown that it is itself a production. So the news media isn't reporting the news, they're producing it. And this is a key distinction. Like there's a shooting at a school. Do the cameramen get in their cars and drive down there and take out their cameras and record the action and report it to you? No. That's not how it works. That's how you're supposed to believe it works because that's how it works in the movies. But in reality, it's the production crew disguised as reporters. Joined by Travis Cloud, R. Cook. Not Shocked says, Utopia was a great series for predictive programming. Yes, Utopia begins with a group of individuals looking at comics and realizing, hey, this comic book series correlates with the actual epidemics that are happening, down to the death count. So they're looking at coincidences in the comics. Then they realize, hey, we have an advanced copy of what comes next. So they were able to determine the next epidemic. Well, this made them dangerous. So the government sends their men in black types to get that information and do away with them. Utopia touches on crisis actors, fake news. It touches on predictive programming. And at the end, and this is probably why they discontinued it, the protagonists take tractors and they crash the warehouse where the vaccines are stored. So they make anti-vaxxers the heroes. Ellen Smith says, just like the term limited hangout, are you familiar with Penrose Triangle? I am not. But if you want to enlighten us. Okay, the Penrose Triangle. Okay, I've seen the graphic. I didn't know what it was. And I'll put it up on the screen. It's the Penrose Tribar, the impossible tribar, or the impossible triangle. It's an impossible object, an optical illusion, consisting of an object which can be depicted in a perspective drawing but cannot exist as a solid object. It looks like a 777, red, white, and gray. But yes, it's an optical illusion for sure. I'm looking at this object and it's definitely perplexing. Now, I'm not sure what that has to do with limited hangouts, but this looks like some Escher, that artist who did these really incredible optical illusions. And the thing about optical illusions is that your senses, they give away that your senses can lie to you. And if you're in a magic show, it's going to trick you unless you know how the tricks work. But the way it's designed, you wouldn't be able to debunk it from your seat. You have to get out of your seat. And we're the ones who are walking around because we know it's a magic show, getting more perspectives. A limited hangout or partial hangout is a tactic used in media relations, perception management, politics, and information management. The tactic originated as a technique in espionage. So again, what we're talking about here is this CIA term, and it says here, when their veil of secrecy is shredded and they can no longer rely on their phony cover stories to misinform the public, they will begin admitting or volunteering some of the truth, while managing to hold key damaging facts. The public is so intrigued by the new info that it doesn't pursue the matter any further. This is used by the CIA and other intelligence organizations. Fascinating. But this is what we see quite a lot of. I happen to think that this is how they control the so-called truthers, they know that some people aren't going to buy into the mainstream news. Knowing this, they plant stories that will be very attractive to those who are looking for the big picture. I think most red pills are limited hangouts. It's like, oh, this guy sees the news is fake, or 9/11 was not as they reported, so give him this. Tell him it was done by reptilians. Okay, well, now you have 100,000 people looking at the possibility that reptilians did 9/11. Well, now you have the intelligence agencies directly able to list and get their hands on every person who sees through the hoax. And they're given a version that doesn't damage the integrity of the mainstream story. It's damage control. Okay, tonight we talked about the fake bears, which I think is a very important topic. We talked about Angus Cloud. Does life imitate psyops, or do psyops imitate life? Brought up the fact that Trump is being federally charged for attempting to overturn the election, and we're just 3 days away from a day that may change the entire world if it goes down like prophesied in predictive programming. I'm interested to see how it goes down. I'm not entirely certain that 8/4 of this year, Obama's birthday, something will happen, but this has been something discussed in our circle for some time, and there are many people finding copious amounts of predictive programming that I would be very surprised if nothing happened. But if it does happen, as prophesied, then you can expect everything to change. Like for this would be, there's really no way to say how big the response would be if what they are apparently planning to do actually happens. He's going to be at the Renaissance Hotel in Montgomery on 8/4. And the name Renaissance, of course, some have connected it to Beyonce's cover art she did for Vogue with the horse. I would connect Renaissance with rebirth, resurrection, all synonymous terms that tie into this psyop, which says that Trump's going to be somehow martyred, but it will survive and it will somehow catalyze some kind of societal calamity. I've been following Michael in Truth, who has one of the best channels on Twitter for this. And one of the ways that he has been honing on 8/4 is just finding these very, very hard to deny correlations between various dates and the time between them. And it's beyond coincidence at this point. Yes, Lean Dion, Into the Light. So there's a documentary by General Flynn called Into the Light that also is released on 8/4. And so the darkness into the light has been this recurring theme with the whole Q movement. And I would say that General Flynn is one of the main figures in that movement. And if you haven't seen the trailer, I'll put it on the screen just briefly. So you see the words Into the Light, and then it's a big white door that opens up, premiering August 4th. Many have connected this kind of ominous trailer for this documentary. We're about to be led out of the darkness. It's 44 seconds long on this trailer. And it starts off with, first you see an individual with a rifle and a gun, like a sniper. So if you're looking for any indication of predictive programming for some kind of a JFK-like event for August 4th, yep, you find it there as well. Should be an interesting week. Anyway, thanks everyone for the comments, and obviously the callers. Always appreciate the callers. I know this was a strange topic tonight, the fakeability of bears, but you know, fakeability is a very important concept here. The fakeability is ultimately what we're talking about, because the public doesn't know the magnitude of the fakery. They think fakery is lying. They think it's Jussie Smollett. They think it's political bias. They have no idea that entire events, real world events that seem real anyway, that entire situations could be contrived and passed on as real And it's because the public doesn't know just how credulous they've been rendered, how visually illiterate they have been rendered. And the fact that they can't tell real from fake, and that they think that you can get enough information to make a sound decision or decide if something's real or fake based on a TikTok length video. Like, these are unreasonable expectations. I call it the TikTokification of the human mind, because what they have done is they have taken the relevance of facts and tossed them into the sea of irrelevance, as Aldous Huxley wrote about, and we're living it right now. And the only way to maintain a sense of integrity, of objectivity, is to network with those who aren't putting their heads through the MSM filter. Those of you who have already un-effed your own minds, which took a little bit of work, reverse engineering, and the ego takes a few blows as you realize, I've been duped, I've been lied to, I fell for this, I fell for that. But to me, there's no shame in admitting that you're wrong. In fact, I like it when I'm demonstrated to be wrong so I can be corrected. The sooner you correct your course, the sooner you can focus on, I think, other areas. I mean, there's just so many areas right now. Fakeability is a huge thing. Just awareness, Psywar awareness. You know, just the existence of crisis actors is a major paradigm shift that many have missed out on. But the fact of it is, prior to 2012, the only people who would have had that insight would have been intelligence agency members, Psyop operatives, people at that capstone level of manipulation. So we're playing with fire. And we have information that is outside of our pay grade, information that was never intended for us, and we are not allowing them to dilute the power of that information. You know, knowledge is power, information is the thing that they use to maintain their power disparity. It's the knowers and the believers. The knowers on top, believers on bottom. And the sea of belief, of subjectivity, is a major cesspool. And it's increasingly divorced from reality. And again, I think it's very important to raft up, to network. And what we're creating here is a parallel media that isn't contaminated by any of their mind junk. Speaking of mind junk, this is Pope Elon.
It's like, we're all going to die someday. And if you're going to...
All right, have a great evening. Archives will go out shortly.
Then why not Mars? Okay. You know, if we're born on Earth, why not die on Mars? Seems like maybe it'd be kind of exciting. But so I think, given the choice of dying on Earth or dying on Mars, I'd say, yeah, sure, I'll die on Mars.
Playing a game with all the soul. you can tell it's real because it looks so fake.